The photographer was already in the past when I came out of the walk-in with my arms full of parsley and saw whose hands were on my plate. Two critics, a food writer, the whole front of house arranged like a wedding party, and Tobias Wren in a clean white jacket he had not sweated in once that day, standing over the dish I had built across 9 months, saying, "The idea came to me last spring. It's my grandmother, really. It's the whole reason I opened this room." The dish was a smoked eel and burnt onion thing with a broth I had failed at 40 times. His grandmother was from Surrey and had, by his own telling at every staff meal, never cooked anything that did not come out of a tin. I stood there in a doorway in a filthy apron with parsley up to my chin, and the food writer said, "And who's this?" And Tobias glanced back at me and said warmly, "That's Frankie. She's brilliant. She runs my prep." My prep. 9 months, 40 attempts, a broth I had rebuilt on my own time in my own flat with my own money. And I was the girl who ran his prep. I did not throw anything. I did not say a word. I set the parsley down on the bench and squared the bunch up neatly. And something under my ribs that had been aching so long I had stopped calling it pain, went cold and still and perfectly clear. All right, I thought, not loud, just done. Yusuf found me in the yard afterwards, already apologizing for a man who had not asked him to. "Don't make it a thing," he said. "That's just how he talks to press. Everyone knows it's your dish. Everyone in that kitchen knows." I said, "Everyone in that kitchen is not writing the article." Then Delia came out, the general manager, who had been at Wren for 6 years and had a talent for arriving with a reasonable version. And she said, "Frankie, love, you're being paid to be here. That's how kitchens work. It's his name over the door and his money at risk, and your dish is on his menu, which is the best thing that will ever happen to your CV." And I looked at her, and I understood, with a clarity that took the wind out of me, that this was not a mistake anybody was going to correct. It was the arrangement. It had always been the arrangement, and everyone in that yard had known it before I did. Here is what 18 months at Wren cost, itemized since nobody there ever wanted it itemized. I did 6 days on the pass and a seventh developing unpaid because Tobias called it collaboration and I called it luck. I did not go to my brother's wedding because we had a table booked for a magazine and Tobias said the room needed me. And then he was not in the building that night. I stopped seeing anyone because you cannot keep saying sorry, not this week, and eventually people stop offering weeks. And I did all of it happily. That is the part I need you to understand because I love that kitchen. And I was learning, and I was 29 and being tired felt like proof of something. What I would not do again is do it for a man who was quietly deciding what I was owed while I did it. Because the plate was not the worst of it. The worst of it I found in November in the office, looking for a supplier invoice, when I opened the wrong folder and found the paperwork for the book. A cookbook, signed in the summer, delivered to the publisher in October. 46 recipes. And I sat on the office floor and read the contents page twice, because my eyes would not hold still. 19 of them were mine. Not adapted, not inspired by, mine, down to the resting times, down to a mistake I had made in the salt on the fennel dish, and kept because it was better wrong. And on the title page, one author, and in the acknowledgments at the back, a list of 31 names, kitchen porters, suppliers, his mother. And there I was alphabetically between the fishmonger and the florist. Frankie Okonjo, Thank you for listening to Channel Crystal Novel. I did not confront him. I want to be clear about that because I know the version of this where I scream in a service and I did not have it in me, and I am glad. What I did was go home to a flat that smelled of nobody's kitchen but mine and sleep for 11 hours for the first time in a year and a half, and then get a folder. Because it turns out I am a person who documents 18 months of development notebooks, dated, photographed, every version of that broth with the date in the corner of the picture, 40 of them. Text messages where Tobias asked me at midnight whether I had cracked the onion yet. A recipe I had emailed him from my own account on a Sunday, time-stamped, with his reply saying, "This is the one, don't change it." It was not evidence of a crime. It was just a record. And I made 3 copies. And then I did the only clever thing I have ever done in my life, which was to wait. Because the book was not out yet. And a book that is not out yet is a thing a publisher can still be embarrassed by. And a book that is already out is just a book. The gut punch came in December from Yusuf, and it was not a scheme, which is why it landed. He caught me on the night bus and he said, "You've gone strange. You're doing the work and you're not in the room, and everyone can feel it, and Toby thinks you're punishing him." Then he said the true thing. "But Frankie, nobody made you stay. He never once locked the door. You chose the 7th day. You chose the unpaid nights. And now you want us all to feel like criminals for a bargain you made with yourself." And I sat with that for a full stop, because there was a version of it that was fair. Then I said, "You're right that I chose it. I chose to give him everything I had. What I didn't choose was for him to sell it under one name and put me between the fishmonger and the florist." Yusuf looked out the window for a long time. Then he said, "Which fennel one is yours?" I said the one with too much salt. And he said, quietly, "I always thought that was the best thing on the menu," and did not say anything else the whole way home. And 3 weeks later, he was the one who told me exactly which day the publisher's people were coming in. They came in January for a photo shoot in the actual kitchen, which was the whole point of the book, the room and the man and the story about his grandmother. And I did not ambush anybody. I want that understood, too. I finished my shift. Then I asked the publisher's editor, a woman called Inez with reading glasses on a chain and no patience left after 11 hours in a hot room, whether she had 10 minutes. And I put the folder on the steel bench. And I said, 19 of the recipes in this book are mine. I'm not asking you to take his name off it. I'm asking you to check before you print it, because if you don't, somebody will check afterwards and it will be worse for you than it is for me." And she said wearily, "Everyone in every kitchen says this." And I said, "Then look at the photographs. They're dated, 40 versions of the broth. And the last one is 9 days before he signed." She started turning pages, and then Delia came in fast, having been fetched, and did the loud thing, which was to say in front of the editor, "Frankie, this is theft. That's internal property. You took that out of the office." Which is a sentence that has never once been said by somebody who thought the folder was wrong. Inez took her glasses off. Tobias arrived in a clean jacket and said, "This is a misunderstanding. Frankie is very tired." And I said the only thing I said to him all night. "Toby, which one is the fennel and why is the salt wrong?" And he stood there in his own kitchen in front of his own publisher and did not know. The book was pulled from the schedule and came out 14 months later with 2 names on the cover. and mine first on 19 of the recipes, which is not what I asked for and is more than I expected. I was gone by then. Wren lost a critic's rating that spring for reasons the guide described as inconsistency. And Delia left in the summer, and Tobias is still there and still very good on television. And I bear him a specific and manageable amount of ill will that I take out about twice a year. Yusuf came with me, so did a commis called Pip, who nobody had ever asked a question. We had a 22-seat place above a bookshop for the first 2 years, and now we have 40, and a lease in my own name. And there is one rule in that kitchen that gets said out loud at every trial shift, and it is not about knives or timings. If you develop it, you own it, and your name goes on the card. Every dish on my menu has the name of whoever built it printed underneath, in the same size type as mine, including the ones I built. And guests find this eccentric, and I do not care. Pip has 3 on there now. The first night one of hers went up, she stood at the pass and read the card about 9 times, and Yusuf said, "It doesn't come off, you know." And she said, "I know," and kept reading it anyway. So let me ask you, since you stood in that doorway with her, did she go far enough, or was she still too merciful? Comment justice if the ending was perfect. Comment harder if you wanted an even colder revenge. Your comments decide how ruthless the next ending should be. Like and subscribe if you want to be here for the next.